This time around, we're going to take a deep dive into the front approach. We're going to start out by talking about terminology and vocabulary to make sure we're all using the same terms when we're describing various parts of the dive. Then we're going to break down the dive into its most important elements. We're going to look at some timing issues. We're going to look at arm pattern. We're going to look at body positioning. We're going to see what we can do to help you to make your divers better when you're breaking down their front approaches. Let's start by just taking a look at Gretchen, one of our national team members, as she performs a front 1.5 tuck. We're not really going to worry about the dive itself. We're just going to take a really good look at that front approach.
Let's start by taking a look at some of the different terminology that we're going to use when we are analyzing these dives. The first term we need to know is the stance. This is our starting position, and you can see our diver is in her stance right now, standing tall, looking at the end of the board. That's the stance. Now, as we move forward, the last step that she takes before she brings her knee up is called the drive leg. The drive leg plants here about 2 foot lengths away from the end of the board. And then the next term we need to know is the hurdle knee. She's going to drive her knee up at a right angle, and at the same time that she brings her hurdle knee up, she's also reaching her arms up into an overhead position. So this is a very complicated moment in every dive. It is the moment when many dives go very, very wrong. But we're talking about drive leg planting. Drive leg, that's our first term. Hurdle knee coming through as the first reach swings up into position. So you've got your drive leg, you've got your hurdle knee, and you've got your first reach. Now, once the diver has left the board, she's going to put her hurdle knee back down, and she's going to straighten her body into our next important piece of vocabulary here, the step out. So now, if you're familiar with the diving alphabet that we use at Montgomery Dive Club, this is the H position, arms overhead with hands separated, body straight. So she is stepping out of her hurdle into an H position. We're hoping that that's going to be as straight a line as possible and balanced, dropping in over the tip of the board. Once she's completed her step out, the next thing we're going to see is the arms drop out to the sides, and she's going to make contact with the board, that landing, and ride the board down and back up. That's our board ride, is this period of contact with between the feet and the board. During the board ride, the arms are swinging back up and overhead into our final term, the second reach. There's our second reach. Now that we have our terminology established, let's take a look at each one of the elements of the dive and break it down in a little bit more detail. The stance position is the way that we communicate with the judges that we are ready to do our dive. So we want to look sharp, we want to look like we are well trained, and like the judges are about to see something great. So we want a nice flat back, nice tall body with a confident body position with shoulders slightly open. That really communicates confidence. The ears should be pulled back in alignment with the spine so that the head is erect and the head is level. So we're not looking up into the sky, we don't have our chin cast way up in the air, we're just nice and level. In this position, you want the diver's eyes to be on the end of the diving board. So she should be looking down in at the end of the diving board, and that position with her eyes should be maintained throughout the entire skill. She should be watching the end of the diving board until she reaches the end of the diving board. She's going to keep this nice, straight, and strong position all the way through every one of the other elements of the dive. The next thing we're going to notice and we're going to take a look at is what she does with her arms as she walks down the board. So she is doing a pretty simple arm pattern here, what I would call a 1-2 front back through pattern, which is just a little mnemonic that I use to help divers to understand the rhythm that the arm pattern should move in. They take 1 step, 2 steps, and then just as the second step makes contact with the board, the arms swing forward and then draw back, and here's the critical moment. So that's front, back, and now as the drive leg makes contact with the board here, we want to make sure that the diver's arms have swung all the way down until they are in a sort of a 6 o'clock position. If you could imagine the diver as a clock face, right? So you've got 12 o'clock at the top and 12 o'clock at the top and 6 o'clock at the bottom. So we want the diver's arms to be just passing 6 o'clock as the drive leg makes contact. And what you'll see in this particular dive is that the arms are slightly behind 6 o'clock, more like 5 o'clock, and that's going to have some consequences for the diver. But that is a critical piece of timing there. We're looking at the arm timing, we're looking at the arm pattern, and if the arms are late going up into the first reach, there are consequences. This dive is a little bit late. The next piece of the arm pattern that we want to look at here is the first reach and the hurdle knee. And because the arm pattern was a little bit late in the earlier part here, you're going to see she's got to bend her elbows a little bit to sneak them up. Watch now as the arm swing slightly precedes the hurdle knee. So the hurdle knee is even with the with her drive leg knee, and her arms are getting up slightly ahead. This is important because these two motions, the lift of the knee and the swing of the arms, the purpose here is to depress the board as much as possible, right? So the arms are swinging up, the knee is swinging up, and these two forces are compounding to drive the board down as much as possible. So we want as much of that knee lift and arm swing to occur while the board is going down. And you can see right here is where the board starts to change directions and come back up. So both of those movements are, just like the arm pattern, a hair late for what we're hoping for in terms of an ideal. But this is our first reach coming up, and now we have a very important moment in every dive, and that is the step out of the hurdle with the arms still above the head. So now she's going to want to establish a nice straight line before she reaches the apex of this jump. She's got a fairly straight line, but there is a little bit of piking going on here. We'd love for that to be a little bit straighter. We'd love ideally to be in a completely straight line there. That slight pike forward and the step out. This is your, what I like to call your moment of zen. The diver is hanging in the air, motionless as we pass through the apex of the hurdle. The more stable and still the diver is, and the longer that body position is, the better, because the longer body is going to be more resistant to loss of balance, right? It's going to be more stable. So now she begins her descent into the end of the board. She's going to let her arms glide out to the side. She doesn't need to pull her arms down out of that H position, that straight line position at the top of the hurdle. She can just let her arms glide and relax all the way down to about shoulder level, and then activate her muscles to accelerate the arms down through the bottom and back up into the second reach. So, as we discussed, there are some elements of the dive that are a little bit late. The arm timing is a little bit late, and now you see the consequence of that lateness. Ideally, the arms are going to be at the hips at the moment that the feet touch the board. Remember our clock face analogy. If we do a clock face on this dive right now, we are looking at arms being a little bit behind in terms of where they should be. They're here. What we would like is for them to be a little more down in here, right? So we're just a little bit off on the timing. Once the board starts to drop, we're again going to be using the action of swinging the arms up to push the board down further. So this sweep up of the arm pattern is supposed to depress the board. So what we would love to see is that the board stops bending and the arms are all the way up. She's a little bit short of that, right? That is the second reach that we're looking at there, and that's the timing element that we've got to watch out for. Is on touchdown, the arm should be right at the hips and moving up. As the board finishes its bend to the bottom, the arm should be all the way back up above her head.
Now that we've taken a look at some terminology and some key elements of the front approach, hopefully you're now well prepared to help your divers to improve their front takeoffs. Good luck.